Hey guys, before we start, a quick shout out to Alpha Dog Nutrition for sponsoring this podcast. Alpha Dog products are now available at dusupply.com, and you can use code ALPHADOG15 at checkout for 15% off and a credit for free shipping to try it yourself. Now let's get you to your podcast.
Welcome to my podcast, where we are going to talk about a lifestyle with dogs and throw in a few life lessons along the way. Whether you're a hound hunter, bird dog enthusiast, running setters, pointers, retrievers, or a flat-out running dog junkie, this podcast is for you. I am your host, Heath Hyatt, a certified law enforcement canine trainer with over 3 decades of personal and professional training and handling experience. It's time for me to pay it forward. So grab your leads, lace up those boots, and come and join me on this lifelong process of teaching, training, and learning. Are you looking to unlock your dog's full potential and give them the best nutrition possible for peak performance? Then look no further. Inukshuk has what you're looking for. Inukshuk's nutrient-dense formulas are crafted to keep your dog's energy high and performance top-notch. Packed with premium proteins and essential fats, Inukshuk delivers the balanced nutrition your dog needs to thrive. From hunting dogs to police canines, Inukshuk is trusted by professionals. Give your dog the power of peak performance with Inukshuk Professional Dog Food. Welcome back, friends, to another episode of What's Up Wednesday, where we know we get all of our canine training know-how, whether you're on your morning commute, just getting some things done around the house, or just winding down. Sit back, relax, and let's get this episode started. So last week we we're talking about the harness and everything. And you know how you change your mind? So I was actually listening to last week's episode. And for some reason, I don't even know why I was doing it. But I was fishing and I was going through podcasts. And I was listening to my podcast regimen. Well, mine popped up and I didn't even fool with it. So I just let it play. And it was, we went through the thing with the harness and the prong collars and the choke collars and the 2-inch collars. And I made the comment in there to just buy you a cheap harness. Well, I'm gonna take that back. Do not buy a cheap harness. If you buy a harness with plastic buckles, and I know that the hound world is going to be a lot different than the canine world. We've had so many plastic buckles break on our harnesses, and the dog either slips out of the harness or the harness shifts on the dog, and it just ends up being a mess or an issue. It could be a bad issue, a safety issue, life and death issue, some of the things that we're doing. So if you do buy a harness, buy metal buckles. Do not get a cheap one. I don't even know why I said that, but don't get a cheap one. Buy a quality harness. You can get some real good leather harnesses. One of my first harnesses was a leather harness. But again, you're putting the dog in forward. You're putting him in 4-wheel drive when you put that harness on him. So just remember that. But I was fishing, and while I was listening to this podcast, I was talking about how bad I suck at musky fishing. Well, it's a fact. I could not even land a 2-foot dink. I got him hooked up, him, her, I don't know. Hit it at boat side. I made about 3 reels. Was getting ready to step down off the front of the boat and grab my net, and bing, it come off. And it was about the same time that I was talking about how awful I am at musky fishing. And I fished for 2 more days since then. Water is bad. Man, they've let the dam out above us, and the water is pretty much chocolate milk. The levels are good. It's not flowing, abnormal. But it's been horrible. I mean, I fished this morning for, 4 or 5 hours, I guess, and they're calling for storms. And actually, I'm looking out the window right now, and the trees blowing sideways, and we've had one heavy rain shower for about 10 minutes, and are calling for a couple more. So had to come off the water. Have caught, some bass, but I've primarily been muskie fishing. I mean, here we're at mid-June. By the time this one drops, it's probably going to be, I don't know, in the 20, let's see, what are we looking at? 21, 22, 25th, maybe 24th, 25th, 26th. I don't know. But, I mean, our season's about over. Like, we try not to fish for them after the water temperature gets 78. It was 71 this morning when I went out. And I'm going to fish a tournament this evening if the weather's permitting and they don't cancel it. But the weather's not looking too well right now. But, so, I mean, I've got to get on the ball because I have not boated a fish yet. And now it's kind of getting to the point where I'm frustrated about it. Like, come on. Like, I threw every type of bait, musky bait, that I had yesterday. And I'm talking from the Mepps Muskie Killer, which is a little old, 4-inch spinner bait. I threw 3 different types of those with different blade styles on them. The water was stained yesterday, but it wasn't as bad as it is today. Threw those all the way up to my pounders. And when I'm talking about the pounders, I'm talking about your big plastic baits that's got a big tail on it that just don't. That's what the tail does in the water. I mean, I threw crank baits, jerk baits. I threw everything that I had yesterday. I fished from early morning on, right after daylight until about 3:00 yesterday evening. So I got in about 7, 8 hours, and I had chores to do. I had to get the yard mowed and everything. But like, I threw everything in the boat at them yesterday. And when I say everything, I literally mean everything that I had, and nothing. I caught that one, hooked him, didn't get him in the boat. And I didn't even move I didn't see, but the water was murky. So I couldn't see down in it about, I don't know, 6, 8, maybe 10 inches you could see in it. So I don't know if I moved anymore or not, but I didn't see any more, and I sure the heck didn't catch them. So here we are, a deranged, disappointed fisherman, because that's where I'm at. So, but anyway, this is going to be a short and sweet one, but I want to tie it into what we talked about last week. So you heard my pitch on the harnesses. Don't buy cheap. Buy something with good metal buckles on them. If you do end up using this at a tree for whatever reason, that you don't want those plastic buckles snapping, and they do. We've had so many of them fail in deployments. They've just become a liability for us. So stay away from that. So we did talk about, the prong collar and the damage that it can do to a dog. Like I said, I'm not opposed to them under the right circumstances, but that is not one. So we're just going to go into a little bit of lead training, because that's where this is going to lead to. So we've talked about recall. We've done that a couple weeks ago. And now we're going to add a lead into that scenario. And everybody has a different opinion, and it's okay. Wherever you're at on the spectrum, it's all good. The earlier, the easier it is to teach a dog, because your puppies, your 10, 12, 14, 16-week-old pups, they can't fight you, right? They're they're at your mercy. So if you put a lead on those, like, you go to these shows and these bigger hunts, and you see, kids dragging these puppies around. They catch on pretty quick, because they got to go along with the program, because they don't have a choice. So, the earlier, the better. I have been waiting till 4 months old to start doing mine on the tie out. And I told you that I've been doing mine on the tie out, kind of starting that back pressure with them while I'm feeding them. So I'm kind of doing 2 birds with one stone. I'm positive reinforcement food. And it's funny how all the dogs act so different. I've got some dogs that don't mind. You got some dogs that shut down. Like the first 2 or 3 times you put them on there, like one of my youngest dogs that I'm fooling with now. She's 6 months old now. like she lately laid down and wouldn't move. And she done that a day or two, and then she actually would eat laying down. And then the next thing you know, she's standing up, 4 or 5 days into it. She's not paying a bit of attention. And that's all it took to lead break her. Like, we took her down the river for Memorial Day and let her run around, and we literally would put a lead on her and then put your folding chair, put the lead underneath the folding chair. So that was kind of like when you're sitting in it, it's kind of the anchor. She didn't pull, she didn't do anything. Like, she was really good with it. So the younger the better. There's different styles or different ways, but we're just going to kind of hit some high points. One of the things that when you talk about lead training, we need to talk about equipment right off the bat. You can go to the flat collar or the harness. We're going to leave the harness out of this because I'm not a believer in that for this purpose. Your standard leash, 4 to 6 feet. Like, I've got traffic leads that I use, which are 18 inches, where I just grab them. They're hanging off the dog, and I can grab the dog. It gives me something to hold on to really quick. That's in the working side of it. I do have some 4-foot leads, and I've got stuff all the way up to 50-foot leads or long lines, whatever. But, look at your leash, what you want. I'm not a big proponent of the retractable leads. I think they have a purpose, and a lot of people use them for different things, especially when you're out. Once your dog gets broke to lead, then I don't see a big problem with it. But for the starting purposes of it, I don't know that I would start. And we're not even going to talk about the head halters and stuff like that. We're just going to talk about the plain Jane, collar, the collar for the dog and a lead. Now, I prefer, for me, when you're talking about equipment, I like to use a slip lead when I'm starting this process. And that way I can turn the pressure on and off very quickly. And the dog learns a little bit faster in my experience than snapping it on a collar. And then the dog's got some leeway when he pulls into it. And I know you guys, I'm sitting here kind of acting all this out, but when the dog pulls into it, they're putting pressure on the side of their neck, and, or they could be putting it on the front of their neck. They could be putting it on the top of their neck. But with a slip lead, I'm putting it, it's like when you put the pressure on, it covers all sides. When you take the pressure off, it relaxes on all sides. So I like to start with a slip lead. There are numerous different ones you can get. I know some of the bird dog guys, I think I recommended a podcast to you guys that they're using one that's almost like a rope for horses. It's very stiff. You can get in and out of it pretty quick. And I'm using the same style, except mine's not stiff. And I tell you where I started this is when I went to the vet, the little blue and white leads they give you. Man, I kept one of them things long time ago, and I still have it. Now I've got a whole, if you look in my little place where I keep all my dog stuff, I mean, I probably got 8 or 10 of them hanging up there, and I'll grab one of them really quick. And that's what I kind of start with. So choose the right equipment, what you're going to be working with, however you're going to be doing it, but a good lead and collar. Like I said, I prefer the slip lead when I'm starting this. If you have the opportunity, you can start this stuff inside. Okay. I know that I talked about, I do crate train some of my dogs, especially if I'm doing singles. I'll have them in the I'll have them in the basement in the crate. I've got 2 crates set up downstairs, and I do that quite a bit. So if you can start inside, or some confined space where the dog's not just trying to bust out of there. You can let the dog loose, let him run around, figure things out, and then put him on a lead. You want to do it in a calm, rewarding behavior, right? And we're going to talk about a couple of those little things as we go through here. Short sessions. This does not need to be long. I mean, if you're doing stuff 5-10 minutes, probably need to I'd stay on the 5 side. That's where I'd kind of start at with this. And, you know, we can talk about all different type of things. You know, what using treats or using hot dog. I don't know what people use. Everybody uses stuff differently. I use the food, which the Inukshuk that I'm using, I've been using that. That kibbles, you know, I can hold, you know, a handful of it. But and you got to mark the behavior that you want. That's one thing that I've learned from the canine side of it. You can use a clicker or a verbal marker, yes or good. The thing with the verbal stuff is the inflection in your voice changes. So let's say your dog performed the task that you asked him at a very good high level, and you're like, yeah, you know, you're excited. The dog performed the same task, but it wasn't as enthusiastic. It kind of just ho hum through it and went and did it. You're like, yes, or good. The inflection in your voice means a lot to that dog. So when you use a marker or a cue, um, I when I'm doing that, I'm using a clicker most of the time because that clicker it's consistent. Click, 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 click. It's not changing, and the inflection in my voice does change. So um, that's something that I have kind of teeter tottered or learn to balance it as you're doing it. So, all right, let's just talk about the methods. So, years and years and years ago, um, the good old days uh, were not so cool. When I first got into canine training, we were taught command, correction, command, command, correction, command. So basically, what we did is we took off walking with a lead. A lot of that, um, a lot of that involved a prong collar, and we took off at a heel. We had the dog by our side, and when the dog got off away from our heel, the dog turned or whatever. We turned and went the opposite direction with the command correction command with a no heel, and then we took off in that direction, and we just repeated that, repeated it. So we start straight, the dog veers off, you know, heel, no, heel, go right back into it, and that was the way that I was taught. And I mean, it's been 10, 12, probably been 10 or 12 years since I've used that, but that's what we did. So, you know, that was one of the ways we were taught. But why I'm telling you that story is because I took something from that. There's a lot of ways to train a dog to heel, right? And the luring process, you see me doing into some of my videos. I'm holding the kibble in my hand. I've got the hand down to my side. So it's right on my thigh to the outside. And when that dog gets close to me, in fact, I'll post a video of this. The dog is eating out of my hand because I've got my hand open. The kibble's accessible, and I take a couple of steps, and the dog follows right along with me because he's eating out of my hand, and that becomes a learned behavior. That's a very good way to do it. But once we get out of the luring process, we've got to be able to do some other things. Another way to do it is the stop and go. Okay. What does that mean? I'll put the dog on a lead and I stand still. And if there's any tension on that lead whatsoever, I don't move. I don't go nowhere. And when the dog either comes back to you or gives slack in the lead, then you take a step or two. And you can do that with a reward. You can do that with the same system. You can do the reward system with it. And like I said, I'll try to video some of this and post it on YouTube just so you can get an idea. I mean, this is not complicated. This is basic stuff, just trying to get through it. But the stop and go works really well. And especially if you've got a dog that is very erratic. And what I mean is you put a dog on a lead and it kind of wants to jump and flop and pull around. And then what it'll do is it'll turn and flop and it'll back up against the lead and it'll be looking at you, but its backs away from you and it's got all the tension on it. Everybody's seen that. We've all dealt with that, right? Just stand still when the dog takes off of pressure. You take a step up, good, and then you go from there. And so that works really well. So that's part of the old style of training I do. I've just taken the turn in the opposite direction and walking off. So once you get the dog in the luring position, then you can you can start adding some of that into it. And you always want to do with a heel, come, close. I mean, 1,000 words, whatever you want to use to get the dog in that command. But one thing that I've also learned too is in the hound world, um, like when I'm doing obedience for my canine stuff, the heel to me, the dog's beside me, he's paying attention to me, and like I most of the time he's looking at me, he's got eye contact. We're going to talk about eye contact in a minute. He's looking at me, he's paying attention to me, he's watching me. But again, I started with the lure and I shaped that behavior to where I wanted it, to where the dog was looking for me for direction. You don't really need that with the hounds. So what I do with the hounds, instead of telling them to heel, I'll tell them walk. Walk. Okay. What does that mean? That means that you've got a little bit of space here. I don't need your leg in sync with my left. I don't need your right leg in sync with my left leg. And I don't need you staring at me viciously like, okay, 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 let's go, let's go. Like you're free to do what you want to do. I just don't want you pulling my arm out of socket. So I'll tell my dogs to walk. And I do a lot of the horse stuff, whoa, 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 easy, especially when I'm going down like steep inclines or stuff that's kind of dangerous. Or I'll tell my dogs to wait, and then I'll get a step or two ahead of them, and then have them come to me. But yeah, so whatever verbiage you want to do, I let my dog. I tell them to walk. That way they're not pulling my arm out. And when you're doing this, and I don't care what type of training you're doing, whatever you choose to do, do it calm. You need to be consistent. We talk about consistency in training a lot. Be consistent. And guys, you can't let them pull. Once you start letting them pull, every time they do, then that's just another time they're going to do it. And they learn that pulling works. So if I pull, then I get to go. So that stop and go is a really good technique, and I really like that technique because of that. Then you want to add some distractions, which, looking at canine stuff compared to the hound world, like our distractions is pretty much, the bear coming out of the tree and the dog seeing it, or something of that sort, which puts them in prey drive, which changes things to a whole different level. And, we won't even cross that bridge today because your dogs are going to pull at that point. So our distractions are a little different than what it would be if you were just going for daily walks, maybe your neighbors or a motorbike, or, if you're going downtown, it's going to be cars and it's going to be other people and other people with dogs. So, you want to do some distractions just to make sure you've got a hold on it. But I don't think we as houndsmen need to do it to that extent. But if you do it to that extent, you're going to have a really, really, really good handle on your dogs. So anyway, yeah, I mean, like I said, there's a lot of methods out there. I mean, we could go over all of them. It would just take us all the time. Let me just kind of give you some problem solving because I do this a lot in the canine world. All right, if your dog's pulling consistently, stop and wait. Do not move. And you may only get one session out of this, right? We talk about the stop and go. Like, boom, stop and wait. And then once it gets back to you, don't go in the same direction. You want to change directions. Remember, I just told you about the old style where we go away from every time they do something, we go the opposite direction. what if your dog lags behind you? Like when we start puppies and stuff, we've all had the dogs that lay down. We've had dogs that drag. Um, you know, I'm going to change up my training just a little bit with them. I'm going to be more upbeat. I'm going to be a higher pitched voice. Hey, I'm going to use my treats, my dog food, or whatever it is that's got a little bit higher value reward for them, and encourage that forward movement. And we only may get a session or two out of one training session, right? I get the dog to stand up and take a step. Bam, that's a good day. We'll go on and we'll do something else tomorrow. You don't have to like wear it out. Like sometimes you may only get a stand up. Sometimes you may only get a step or two steps. So, don't fret that. Rome wasn't built in a day, and all dogs are different. And I say that, I want to tell you a story. I was certifying dogs this past week, and I had a couple dogs from not in my jurisdiction. They were from other jurisdiction that had come up for me to certify them. So I don't get to see these handlers a lot. I don't get to see them. I get to see them once or twice a year, and that's about it. So we were doing building searches or interior searches for narcotics. And anyway, he was asking me about a problem with his dog. And I explained to him, like, okay, let's do X, Y, and Z. Let me set it up and let me show you. So anyway, we start to exercise, and you guys hear me talk about, I like for the dogs to self-discover, right? I want them to teach themselves. That takes me out of the loop, and it takes half the amount of time. And you get to move on to other things very quickly. So his dog did what we thought he was going to do. And I'm like, all right, just wait him out. And he's like, all right. And I'm like, in just a second, you're going to get the Stevie Wonder. And he's like, huh? And I'm like, the dog's going to start looking around. And then he's going to look back to you. And then he's going to look back to where he's at. And then he's going to get up and walk off. And no sooner than I had said that, the dog started doing a Stevie Wonder, man. He's looking around. And then he looks back over his left shoulder at the handler. Handler wasn't getting the reward out. So the reward wasn't coming out. And the next thing you know, the dog gets up and starts to walk off. And I'm like, verbal praise, good boy, and move on. And we went on and accomplished the thing. But I guess it's funny that you see so many dogs over a period of time that you can predict the behavior. And yes, dogs are different. All dogs are different. All dogs act different. I mean, you got the wired up dog that, that can't slow down. And then you got the dogs that's just kind of doop, 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 they're just going through it. Right. But anyway, it was good. And it was, I sit there and I think, I'm like, all right, this is what this dog's going to do. And like I said, I hadn't seen, this was the first time I'd seen this dog because he got a new dog. But it's exactly what he did, and we was able to work through it very quickly and move on. So all dogs are different, but a lot of their behavior is predictable. That's why I'm telling you that. So, yep, do your lead, do your homework, do your foundation stuff. It don't take 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes a day, and you can get this stuff done. And it's done, and you don't have to worry about it. When you dogs 2 and 3 and 4 years old, you've done crossed all these bridges, and you've got a pretty solid hound or a really good handling hound or so on and so forth moving forward. So, hey, I hope you guys like that song that I played last week, because I'm going to end it I'm going to put it on the end of this podcast. So catch you guys next Wednesday. Have a good one.
Crack of dawn, trucks gassed and loaded, collars charged and the GPS coded hounds. Hounds in the box, tails starting to thump. They know that ridge, they feel that jump. Bear sign fresh on the mountain trail. You can smell the storm in the cool thin gale. Let them loose and watch them fly. That deep bay rings knit the open sky. I'm a bear hound man, born and bred, chasing thunder where the brave don't tread. Through rock ravine and pine so tall, I trust them Mowers hit dirt where the claw marks stay. Old boar's moving and he won't play. Young dog's learning, old dog leads, running with purpose, not just speed. Treetops shaking and the chase gets tight. You thank the Lord when they tree it right. One long howl from your cold-nosed crew, you know they earned it every boot step too. I'm a bear hound man, born and bred, chasing thunder where the brave don't tread. Through rock ravine and pine so tall, I trust them hounds when the big ones fall. They run with fire, they run with pride, with grit and heart. I can't deny it ain't for fame, it ain't for show. It's the wild calling, and I go. Folks don't get it, but that's alright. It ain't their soul that howls at night. It's generations in each stride, and I'll pass it down with hounds that side. I'm a bear hound man, born and bred, carving legends where few have led. Through brush and snow, through heat and rain, that old bear trail runs in my veins. So here's to the pack who run the sound, standing firm when the bear turns round. We live out loud, we live full grown, in the high wild woods, we're home. Yeah, we're home, where the black bear runs and the hound dogs roam. I'm a bear hound.